in the vast, unforgiving expanse of the North Atlantic. Some 20 miles off the rugged western coast of Scotland lie the Flannan Isles. These remote, uninhabited islands have been the subject of local lore for centuries, places whispered about in hushed tones, believed to be enchanted, or perhaps cursed. But our story isn't one of ancient myth. It's a true, documented mystery that begins at the turn of the 20th century, a tale that has baffled historians and investigators for over 100 years. At the heart of this enigma stands the Flannan Lighthouse, a stoic sentinel of stone and iron, built to guide ships through these treacherous waters. For the sailors navigating the violent seas, its beam was a beacon of hope, a promise of safety. But in December of 1900, that light, and the men who tended it, would become the center of a haunting and inexplicable disappearance. The story begins with a routine check. On December 15, 1900, the steamer Arctur en route from Philadelphia to Leith passed the Flannan Isles. Its captain noted something deeply unsettling in his log. The lighthouse, which should have been burning brightly against the winter gloom, was dark. This was a serious breach of protocol. A lighthouse doesn't just go out. Its flame is a sacred duty. He reported the outage upon docking, but due to severe storms battering the coast, no immediate action could be taken. For 11 long days, the seas raged. Finally, on December 26th, Boxing Day, the weather broke just enough for the lighthouse tender ship, the Hesperus, to make its journey to Eilean. On board was Joseph Moore, the relief keeper, ready to take his turn at the isolated post. As the ship approached the island, a sense of unease settled over the crew. The island was eerily quiet. No one was at the landing stage to greet them. No flag was flying from the pole, and perhaps most disturbingly, the provision boxes for the keepers lay untouched. Moore sounded the ship's horn and fired a signal flare, but the island remained silent, still. A heavy dread filled the air. Left with no other choice, Moore rowed ashore, alone. He climbed the steep stone steps leading up to the lighthouse, his heart pounding with each step. He reached the main door and found it closed, but unlocked. He pushed it open and stepped inside. The silence within was absolute, a heavy, oppressive stillness. In the kitchen, a meal of salted mutton and potatoes lay on the table, uneaten, as if the men had been called away mid. A chair was overturned, a small but jarring detail in the otherwise orderly room. Moore moved through the quiet corridors. He found the keepers' beds, neatly made and empty. The clock on the wall had stopped. Everything was in its place, clean and tidy, yet it felt profoundly wrong. It was a home without life, a scene frozen in time. He went to check on the most crucial part of the lighthouse, the lamp. Everything was in perfect working order. The reservoirs were full of oil, the wicks trimmed, the lenses polished. The keepers had clearly prepared the light for the evening of December 15th, but it had never been lit. This wasn't just neglect, it was impossible. For 3 experienced keepers Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald McArthur, to abandon their post was unthinkable. Their entire existence revolved around keeping that light burning. When the Hesperus's captain joined Moore, they discovered more strange clues. 2 of the 3 sets of yellow oilskins, the heavy-duty waterproof gear, essential for survival in the Atlantic storms, were gone. 1 set remained, hanging on its hook. This suggested that 2 of the men had gone outside, but 1 had stayed behind. Why would anyone venture out into a violent storm without their protective gear? And where was the 3rd man? The main gate leading to the landing stages was shut tight, and the massive iron railings on the cliffside path were bent and twisted, as if struck by a colossal force. The most perplexing evidence was the lighthouse logbook. The entries, penned by Thomas Marshall, painted a grim picture. On December 12th, he wrote of a severe storm, the likes of which he'd never seen in 20 years. He described James Ducat as being very quiet, and the 3rd keeper, Donald McArthur, a notoriously tough ex-soldier, as crying. This was shocking. What could make a seasoned mariner weep? The entry for December 13th was even more unsettling. It stated the storm was still raging, and that all three men had been praying. These were hardened, practical men. What terror had gripped them so completely? The final entry was on December 15th. Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all. But weather records from the surrounding area showed no storms on the 12th, 13th, or 14th of December. The weather had been calm. The violent gales didn't hit until the 16th. Were the log entries a fabrication, a descent into shared madness? Or were the keepers witnessing something else entirely, a localized, freakish storm that no one else saw? The official inquiry, conducted by the Northern Lighthouse Board, concluded that the men were likely swept away by a freak wave. The theory goes that two keepers went down to the western landing to secure a supply crate during a sudden swell. When they didn't return, the third man, perhaps without even stopping to grab his oilskins, ran out to help, only to be washed away by another monstrous wave. This would explain the bent railings and the missing men. It's a plausible, rational explanation, but it doesn't quite fit all the facts. Why would experienced keepers, men who knew the sea's treachery better than anyone, risk going down to the exposed landing during high tide and heavy swells? Why would the logbook describe storms on days when the weather was calm? And why was the main door and gate closed behind them if they were swept away in a panic? Over the decades, other theories have emerged, each more fantastic than the last. Some believe the isolation drove the men mad. Perhaps an argument broke out, leading to a tragic fight where one man killed the other two and then threw himself into the sea in a fit of guilt. Others whisper of supernatural forces at play. Local legends spoke of the phantoms of the Flannan Isles, spirits who resented human intrusion. Could the men have been taken by something not of this world? Stories of sea serpents, ghost ships, or even abduction by foreign spies have all been floated. The truth is, we will never know. The only witnesses were the three keepers, and the sea never gives up its secrets. Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald McArthur simply walked out of the lighthouse and into legend. All that remains is the cold, empty stone tower, the conflicting logbook entries, and the unsettling silence. The Flannan Lighthouse still stands, its light now automated, a lonely monument to an unsolved mystery. As the fog rolls in and the waves crash against the cliffs, the story of the vanished keepers echoes in the wind, a chilling reminder that some questions are destined to remain unanswered. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of history's greatest maritime mysteries. If you find these unsolved stories as fascinating as I do, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content. What do you think happened on that remote island? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Stay curious, and see you next time.